Welcome to the From Pain to Purpose radio show. I'm your host, Eva Fulton. In this show, we explore the incredible journeys of resilience, healing, and transformation. In each episode, we will sit down with individuals who have faced unimaginable struggles and turned their pain into power, heartbreak into hope, and their challenges into meaningful change and finding new purpose in life. Through candid conversations and inspiring stories, we will uncover how pain, whether emotional, physical, mental, or spiritual, can be the catalyst for profound growth and a deeper sense of purpose. So if you are looking for motivation, insight, and real stories of triumph over adversity, you're in the right place. Let's get started on this journey from pain to purpose. Let's give veterans a voice through military broadcast talk.
Hello, everybody. How are you? Happy Saturday, August 29th, the year of our Lord, 2026. I'm gonna say, all right, the Satan's having some fun today because, man, I got on and my guest couldn't hear me talk. My microphone was not working. I had to reboot the computer. And now I have like this little password thing that I'm seeing on the screen. I don't know, the gremlins today, this is where I know I'm doing God's work because the gremlins come out and I just kind of laugh. Okay, whatever. So I got to do something a little fun today besides working on my RV. I'll get to that in a minute. For those of you who don't know, my daughter is engaged and we went on our first little bridal shopping adventure together. Didn't get anything for her, but I got a couple of things for the house. So it's kind of funny how that works. But I did get something from Amazon that came in a while ago. So I can't wait to share that with her. She knows it's coming. I got her approval on it before I purchased it, but she'll look like a doll when we go out and do our, bridal shopping thing with her. So anyhow, RV is coming along, making a lot of great progress, have extra supplies to take back, which is good. And now I'm getting to kind of work on some of the finishes. What did the finishes look like? Because, that the hard work really on some of these projects is the demo, right? Just figuring out how to demo work. And it's so funny how that parallels with life and trying to figure out, all right, if I take this out, this thing's kind of rotted. We got to get rid of this out of our life. We got to get this out of our life. And then you got to start figuring out, well, how do I rebuild my life? Right. So for those of you who don't know, my guest is Russ Blaylock, and he's coming back for a part 2 today. And, one of the things that I have not really talked much about, it was that, I was the wife of an alcoholic. And I'd given up of the backstory in my book, Welcome to My People Garden. The newer version is, I need a poster, need to create a poster, but of the new cover. But I was the wife of an alcoholic, and it took me a while to figure that out. And there were some incidences that happened physically that you don't often know how to handle some of this stuff, and it doesn't really hit you in the face, right? We don't really grasp the issues about things until you get smacked in the face, and from a legal perspective. And when I talked with the attorneys in Tarrant County at the time, they're like, you could file a restraining order. This actually qualifies you for victim witness, kind of protections and stuff like that. So you have to know how to navigate some of these trials in life. And understanding whether you were a veteran or not, right? Alcohol affects many of our lives. I think one of the things that I want to talk to Russ about today is the difference between alcoholics who are binge drinkers versus those who do the sneaking around, versus those who they blatantly do the drinking, and there is the bottles endless. What is it? The bottomless bottle, I think, is one of those phrases. And but a lot of it has to do with the culture that we allow ourselves to be in. Our people garden, right? I always talk about the people garden side of things. We are a reflection of the people garden that we are participating in. And I want to hear Russ's input. Maybe you guys, will understand that too. Coming from the military side of things, we're often a reflection of the culture that we're in, whether it's work, whether it's the military, whether it's family and lifestyle. And how do we navigate some of those things? I think there was something that he had, I was going to go back to, I can't see it right now. But part of his story, Russ's story, has to do with um, you know, the journey, right? Going from uh, doing very well, but how does alcohol in our life bring us to this cliffhanger in life, and we have this wake up call? I got to do something different because this isn't working. All right, it's insanity. So anyways, so I'm going to bring on Russ Blaylock.
Hi, I'm Beaker with Military Broadcast Radio TV. We're your virtual MWR, bringing veterans.
The interview of the week is brought to you by Jersey Mike's, a sub above.
I know you've been having some technical difficulties today. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay,
I hit
great.
the wrong video. That was the first one was the
He
outro
was really
video. I
not
was like,
impressed before I even got started. I mean, just boot me out that quickly. Wow. So
that's the difference between looking at things with my computer glasses versus not, right?
no, I know your pain. So
How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty great. How are you? Other than the
Good,
technical
good.
difficulties, glad we
Yeah, I
got that
know,
worked out.
right? We're doing God's work, right? Satan's trying to steal, kill, and destroy the happiness and joy. And we're going to say,
Wasn't
nope,
supposed
we're
to be
going to
easy.
overcome. We
Right.
are going to overcome. Yeah. So,
Great to
do you
be
have a good
here.
week?
Thanks for yeah, I did. Thanks for having me back. I had a good week. So just staying busy again, just what we spoke about before, life, just lifing and
Right.
a few challenges here and there, but made it. So anyway, glad to be here.
Good, good. Well, I think when we finished talking last week, we were like, hey, I think that there was more to say. Well, I don't think that we finished getting through really your story and, some of these decision crossroads that you had to make. Do you want to cover, where do you want to start?
Well, okay, yeah. I mean, just kind of as a recap from the last time we spoke, I think we were speaking kind of more about the question of whether or not you have an addiction problem. In my case, I know what I know, which is alcoholism. So I'll use that term, kind of broadly, but addiction's addiction.
Yeah.
Vices are vices. But we kind of went over just some of the things to identify and look for, and just seeing, kind of what's happened in your life. That's great for people to self-identify, but it's one of those things too that I know what worked for me, to really grasp where I was I had to walk in and hear other people's stories too, and to hear just how bad it got for some people. And so, my story, there's always someone out there whose story is crazier than mine. And for other people, they need to kind of hear those stories. So I guess I can just kind of back up and try to broadly go over, how I got where I am today, if that's
Okay.
okay with you.
Yeah, perfect.
And yeah, so I mean, just as a recap, I really had a great life as a kid. I kind of grew up on a farm slash nursery, and I had a father that was an alcoholic, and I always knew that there was something wrong with the association of alcohol as it pertained to him. And growing older, I abstained from alcohol until I was 21. And I got involved. You were talking about just the culture and things like that. I got involved in the restaurant industry, and it was evident in that environment. It was downhill from there.
Right.
And every time the bottle touched my lips, there was always an incident. And, normal drinkers, or as we call them, normies, they can go through life and enjoy alcohol responsibly, if you like that term, and they don't have the incidents. I know that I did. I had a series of incidents that other people would consider their rock bottom, but kind of like your tolerance for the drink itself, as your tolerance for the drink goes up, in my case, and I hear this a lot with other people too, so does your tolerance for rock bottom.
Right.
And it gets harder and harder to really be shaken up by the things that happen to you.
Because
And
it's a slippery slope, right? It's a
yeah,
slippery slope.
absolutely. hmm Absolutely. So, my slippery slope, it was always kind of going from the life of the party to the fool of the party really quickly. Later on, the first DWI, and for most people, that's a wake up call enough in itself. Not for me. I had to go back out and do some more market research. And to someone like myself who had ego involved, and not being able to kind of supplant the ego and really ask for help, I was trying to figure out how I could drink my way around the law.
Mhm.
So there were more DWIs to come. And that's really tough to deal with. We live in a community right now. Sorry, my dogs are deciding to go off as they
We
hear
don't.
somebody at the door. But so the second DWI, you would think that that would wake you up, the third, etc. But in the state of Texas, they take the third DWI very seriously. And I was facing a possible prison sentence. I was trying my best to see if I could get out of it again, and get yet some more grace, as if the first two, graceful probations weren't enough. But no, I ended up doing 1 year on a 2-year prison sentence. That was back in 2014. My family was estranged, broke my mother's heart, of course. And I
Yeah.
remember my dad and I eating breakfast at a little cafe. And he said, "You're going to get through this." And that was the last time I saw him when he dropped me off to go sign for my time. And so, anyone who goes into a scenario where they find out they're going to go to prison, if they say that they're not scared, they're lying.
Yeah.
Um, and I had a lot to think about there in county for a couple of months before I caught a chain to the Texas State Penitentiary. And as I was going in, I kept thinking to myself, the crazier I act in here, maybe nobody's going to want to mess with me. I had all these ideas in my head of what it was going to be like. A lot of that was kind of silly things that never came to fruition. But what I was surprised by was my lack of fraternity growing up, not being in the military. I hadn't played football since the ninth grade. When I got into the system, I actually kind of enjoyed the camaraderie of it all. So
Mm.
again, life's lessons were not being absorbed in the way in my head, the way I think it was intended to. And the last 6 months that I was in prison, I actually became a peer support counselor in the unit where I was teaching some LCDC classes. And that was the con in me that got myself into that position. So, ergo, when I got out at the end of a year, it wasn't 3 months later that I violated parole again and was in trouble again with the drink.
Uh, I talk about in my book, I talk about the lies. The lies that we tell ourselves are more damaging and worse than the lies that other people tell us. because it's like what you said, we con ourselves, you know. Oh, I can just have this cookie and it's okay. I can have this drink and it's okay. We tell ourselves these lies. Oh, I can buy this thing and, you know, I can have another cigarette. I can have another drink. I can. We tell the worst liars and the worst effect are the very lies that we tell ourselves.
Right.
And
Yeah.
we have to stop. We have to stop believing our own lies.
Hmm. Or as I call it, you know, I was always the quickest person to purchase my own BS. And you know, I had been in sales my entire life, you know, in and out of sales as well as the restaurant industry. Those two industries both were pressure cookers, ego driven, money driven, driving yourself to exhaustion, all of the perfect kind of culminations for an addict's brain to lead to nowhere
Yeah.
good. But moreover, too, I could sell myself and what my choices were, that it was going to be okay. That we would maybe just have another slap on the wrist. And yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. I buy my own BS. I'm the first person that I sell it to before I go push it on anybody else.
Yeah. So how did you learn how to change those mechanics? Because that's, to me, in
Well,
somewhat, it is a mechanical thing. You got to reframe. So using a change management model like the wheel turnaround, how do you, you know, you just imagine, how do you change those iterative steps, the mechanics, to retrain your thinking and say, okay, I can't BS myself anymore.
well, and you know, the thing is there you mentioned that there can be training and that there can be some mechanical absorption, so to speak, and how we retrain our brain. Um, and you see a lot of that in some of the same LCDC classes that I was kind of participating in and administering while I was there in the unit in that community. You know, cognitive behavioral therapy works to a point,
Hmm.
but I think that cognitive behavioral therapy is something that you can implement after God really clips your wings. And he hadn't clipped mine yet because I didn't have the ability to identify the grace that had been given me multiple times before. And because I had my own spiritual sickness as an agnostic, um, God knew that I needed a few more hard knocks after I got out of there. And so a few years went by and the drinking got progressively worse. uh, I was able to stay out of trouble for several years, but that's just with the law. I was still in trouble with myself. I was still in trouble with my family. It was all falling apart, job after job after job. All the signs were there that a normal person would say, "Hey, this is rock bottom. You know, get
Yeah.
up." And you know, and about 4 years ago, I had basically run off everybody that cared about me, everybody that loved me, and I was sitting in the house by myself. Um, I know that my liver was failing. If you could have seen what I looked like, I didn't even you know, want to look at myself in the mirror. I was almost 300 pounds. I'm all of 5'7" on a good tall shoe day. And
I can't
I
imagine
came,
you at close to 300 pounds.
yeah, well, please try
I
not
mean, I
to.
have not met you in
It,
person, so, but just looking at you on
yeah,
the screen, I can't imagine you at that. You know, Mark was 5'11" and a half. He wanted he wanted to make sure he had that
yeah,
extra half inch. But
that half
he
support.
was yeah, he was probably close to 250. Mark was a big
Mhm.
man because he was like Mr. Clean. Ask Carrie, she'll tell you. You know, he looked like Mr. Clean, had the bald head and everything. But he died of stage 4 liver disease. You know, and it didn't have to be that way. I mean, it was a choice every time he took the glass. And he, remember the cryptosporidium thing back in about 2006 or 7? Do you remember
Hmm.
crypto being in the
Hmm.
news? So
Yeah.
our son Cody got crypto at Keller Point. Mark and I got the cousins of crypto from Keller Point at the same, and Mark didn't get Mark got sick, not as sick as Cody did at the time. Cody was practically ready for the hospital, but we were able to get it control. But Mark got sick too, and he didn't ever really quite get over it because he took all of the extra testing and figured out that he had stage 4 liver disease, and he had some impotence problems that also affected our marriage because then he wanted to watch porn. I had a moral issue with that. I'm Catholic. I had a moral issue with, that being brought into our marriage. That was very difficult for me. I think it's important for having these kinds of conversations for folks to understand the impact that I was the spouse of an alcoholic who was his the alcoholism was not just about him. It was affecting me, and it was affecting us. It was affecting our family, and we ended up losing him. So thank God, Russ, that you've had, an appointment with God to say, hey, you got to do something different, and you're finding your purpose through your story. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel very blessed that it's happened even the way that it had to happen. And like you said, it's not only if there's one alcoholic in a family, it's still a family disease. I mean, the tornado, the destruction, it goes the debris field is huge. I'll put it that way. And
Yeah.
in my situation too, that was difficult even more so is that we were a dual alcoholic family. My spouse and I both were drinkers, and it's unfortunately whenever you're trying to get sober on your own, without a program or without a higher power centered in your life. So when people, let's say we get the flu or you're talking about a disease, sometimes if you get it at the same time, you both recover at the same time. But in a dual addict household, it's not like that. Somebody can get sober for a few weeks or a few months, and then about that time that they do, someone comes back in. It's like giving the flu back and forth to one another.
Mm.
It can never happen at the same time, because it's an individual fight, just like your relationship with God is an individual fight. And
Is
I've
it
told you the
the
last
visual
time.
I'm getting in my head is you're both on the roller coaster ride, but
Hmm.
you're one of you's at the front hitting a different hump than the person is at the back of the train hitting a different hump. You,
All the time.
right.
Hmm.
So
All the
you're
time.
on the same ride, but you're at different stages. That's hard to
And
manage.
if any of your listeners are identifying to any part of my story at all, there's a lot of codependency with addicts. And you put two addicts in the same house, the codependency is its own different thing. And
Yeah.
so at one point, where I told you before, I had been sober for a couple of years, but it wasn't in a 12-step program. There was no spiritual identification. My health was just as bad. My blood pressure was through the roof. COVID visited us, and that was all the excuse I needed to drink again, and it
Mm.
was off to the races. These are sprees. We're always looking for an excuse to have a spree. And at that point, between COVID and me really drinking like on steroids, so to speak, that's when my health went into total decline. My wife had had enough. She moved out with the kids. And I was sitting here by myself in the house, and I was watching something probably on like the Jaya channel or something, and I watched someone talking about spirituality, and I knew that I wanted to believe in a God. Um, but because of my own resentments of the church, I couldn't do it. And something popped up on the channel that spoke to me in a way that I could identify with that spiritual concept. And I got overjoyed, but I didn't know where I could go to a church, an organization, any place to find a way to worship what I'd just seen on TV, sitting there drunk, in my own stink. The dogs didn't leave me. They were the only ones on the couch that could stand me. And I did ask God to show me a way to access that. And it was 2 weeks later, I was arrested for another felony DWI.
Oh,
And this time
no.
I was going to be facing serious time,
Yeah.
serious time. And I kind of thought to myself, this was not the answer I was looking for in that final prayer, that call out to any God that would help me. That was not what I was betting on.
You're right.
But it turned out that it was. Because again, I think you have to have your wings totally clipped before you can really grasp what your higher power, your relationship with God is going to be. And so, just to kind of continue with the story, I knew I was facing probably 8 years. I'm sitting in there and I had a plan. My plan was a control plan. If I could get on the phone with my wife and control her from inside a jail cell and get her to take the tax return and bond me out. My plan was to hop on a cruise ship that would take some kind of stop down around Cozumel, someplace that I could get off and run away to Mexico. Now, what could have gone wrong with that plan? As a drunk, running from the law in another country, right? But in my
Yeah.
sick head, it sounded great. And she refused, which incensed me more and more and more. But then the DA came to me with an offer of a program called FAPE, and it was Felony Alcohol Intervention Program. And I knew a little bit about it, and I knew that it was a last chance for people that were facing real time, and it was going to force me to jump through all sorts of hoops that I knew I didn't have the support group to stand behind me and help me through. And when they took me down in front of the DA, I had decided already that I was going to tell them to take the offer and tell them where to go stick it.
Mm-hmm.
And I walked into the courtroom and I sat down at a desk and I saw this man in front of me, and immediately I could not stand everything about him. His hair was perfect, his suit was perfect, and I knew he was going to offer me this program, and I was going to tell him that I didn't want it. And the words that came out of his mouth was, he said, "Mr. Blaylock, tell me why you want this program." I never asked for it. They came to me with it first thing. And I think the first experience with God was that the words that came out of my mouth were not my own. I said, I want to try to be a father to my boys. And he continued to listen. And I said, I want help. I need help. And I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. And he's writing everything down. And I can't believe these words are coming out of my mouth because I know what I'm committing myself to. And at the end of it, he said, we'll get back to you. And I walked back to my jail cell. And I couldn't believe what I had just done, because I knew that if they did take me, they were going to sign me up for something that I would have to rely on other people's help for. Because you can't drive on your own. You have to have a curfew. You have to have someone in the household that's going to sponsor you who's sober. All of these criteria that I knew that I didn't meet. And I got the answer back, and they said, congratulations, you got the program. But I
Wow.
almost turned grace down. And
For
part of that
folks,
grace was they forced me. Yeah.
So for folks who are tuning in, I have posted what the program is that Russ is talking about. This is for Tarrant County in Texas. You may have one of your own programs in your local jurisdiction, but it is the FAPE program that he is talking about, the felony alcohol intake program. So sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I wanted to make sure that we pointed it out for folks that, there are some websites out there. Just look it up.
Right. And I mean, if you look it up, you can look it up to see kind of what the hoops are that you have to jump into. But as you're kind of looking at your own situation, remember this. In the county that I was arrested in, for example, there's 6,000 convictions a year. They only take 100 people in this program.
Wow. Is
And
it like still in a study stage or something like that? Are they studying the effects of it for a stricter
I believe
intervention
so.
or?
hmm I believe so because what happens is in phase one of that program, I have to report to court every single week. I have to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning and call a hotline and see if I have to go do a drug test. Have to have an ankle monitor that actually takes a sample of your sweat to see if there's alcohol in your system. You can't
Wow.
take a bath or go into the pool or go to the ocean with it. You're chained to their system. You have to check in with a curfew on an app at night, proving that you are at your house where you're supposed to be. There are so many different classes that you're having to take, all of that. And part of that is you report to court in phase one every single week so that the judge and the DA can ask how you're doing, and make sure that you're following up on all the right criteria. And you have people on the defense side and the prosecuting side over there taking notes. And it's because the state of Texas took a great risk on this program, and they are trying to monitor and see what the success rate is so that they
Yeah.
can expand it and broaden it. And so, yeah, when you look at the numbers, myself being one of 100 people out of 6,000 convictions a year, my sponsor at my 12-step program told me one time when I was complaining that I had to walk to an AA meeting. He said, brother, he said, you get to walk to an AA meeting.
Yeah.
You should be in jail. And he said, you need to learn what grace looks like because you got it.
Yeah. Yeah. Just so you know, as you were telling that other part of your story about the words that you were, that you were saying to that counselor, I had goosebumps. God gave you those words to say. Now was the time you were going to receive it. Um, and so, yeah, that also means that there is a certain amount of paying it forward to help somebody else navigate this. And so, is that what you've been doing now? And that's part of the reason why I think you're on the show today, right? Is the paying it forward, that there is some hope, uh, that addiction doesn't have to rule your life.
That's true. And I mean, again, last time we kind of talked briefly on just some of the different resources out there for people, who we're trying to address here. If you think you have a problem, you probably do. And again, in the 12-step program I attend, and I kind of have to thread this needle loosely because there's a lot of ways that you can get help in recovery. And I have my opinion on the ones that work and the ones that don't, or
Hmm.
what I see more success rates in. I can't express enough how grateful I am that part of that fake program is that of all the hoops they make you jump through, all the classes that they make you take. And, there were punitive actions taken against you and sanctions against you if you missed a class. But the one thing that they were hell bent on was that you will attend a certain amount of meetings a week because they know that the community of people who identify with one another as the 12-step programs were created, nothing ensures safety against the drink greater than working with another alcoholic.
Yeah.
We have to realize where so many of us thought that we didn't belong and that's why we drank. Embrace your superpower of your addiction and identifying as an alcoholic, because then you'll find your community of people who think and feel like you.
Yeah.
And you can do your research and see which brand of that looks right for you, but on your own is not the way to attempt this. It has to be in a community of people that identify with the way you think and feel and obsess and try to escape. End of story.
But I think that that's even applicable, like, even in the veteran community and, folks feeling disconnected because they think that, "Hey, they don't the civilians don't understand me." And so they self-retreat and they don't get out there into the veteran community and find like-minded people. It's we have to get over ourselves. I learned that as a phrase a long time ago. Get over yourself and be a friend to yourself and get and find the community that you belong to. And I don't care whether it's, maybe you want to identify as a bowling community, get out there and golfers. Those are communities that you're going to get out there and find your tribe.
Yeah, and if you spend enough time in, for example, a 12-step program, you kind of learn some little key things about identifying other people who, share your condition. And
Hmm.
you realize that whether you're out golfing, bowling, hiking, whatever the case is, you'll pick up on a different type of language that the normies don't pick up on. You will pick up on language used by someone who has gotten through the program and is utilizing that program as a means of recovery. And there's a beauty in that. It's kind of our own fraternity, it's kind of our own club. But getting there is the hard part. And you mentioned kind of the sense of self or feeling alone. Um, my fraternity is that of other alcoholics
Hmm.
wherever I find myself in the world. And that's something that a normal drinker can't identify with. But once I have that, I have to always remember that no matter how strong I am in the community or through the program or my attendance at meetings, all of those things, that it all comes back down to identifying a God of my understanding that was a caring, loving God that accepted me and that I had to rely on. And the first step of that is if you're struggling with that concept, if you're agnostic, if you're atheistic, all you have to do is just pray for the willingness to believe. Just pray for the willingness to be willing sometimes. And that's when it will reveal itself to you. And, the first step in trying to find a relationship with God is to understand you're not it. And
Right, right. You're not
that's
your
the
own
hardest
God.
part. Yeah. And if you thought you were, look at your life. And
Right.
I tried
How's
so
that
many
working
times
for
to
you
believe I
lately?
was. Yeah.
Yeah,
And you look at the path of the destruction behind you and you can't always see it. Everybody else can. But it's until you
yeah.
actually realize that you're not God, that's when you find one.
I was when I first started podcasting last year, I was on one of our fellow radio shows. Um, Jay Kelton has his Kent's Round Table. Red's Round Table is what he called it, and he talked about Celebrate Recovery a lot. That was the program that he belonged to. He said, "But did you know that they have special uh, alcoholic sessions on cruise ships?" And I was like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah." And I forget what it's called, but I remembered what I remembered seeing the, I remember seeing it on the itinerary, when they have different events that are happening on a cruise. And I was like, "Oh, so that's what that was. You can go on a cruise, and don't worry, you can have a meeting on a cruise and you can still do normal life. Don't buy the package, don't buy the alcohol package and think you're going to get a different result.
Right.
But you can go on a cruise, and because there's all that temptation out there, go to a meeting.
Yeah.
And in part of,
There
I
are,
think, isn't part of the challenge not whether it's just your spouse or going to events, that there's alcohol there and you have to relearn how to identify, how do you handle the temptation that everybody else is drinking but you're having to choose not to? How
sure.
did you
And
navigate that?
so everyone has to approach that differently. I know that for people that I'm very close with, they would change their driving route. If they used to stop at this gas station over here on the way home or on the way to go pick up the kids, they would change their driving route entirely. and it's different for everyone. I was a little bit different. I For me to avoid something, this works for me personally. If I'm told I have to avoid something, it's going to call to me more. So when I walked into the grocery store, there are other people that would avoid the wine aisle to get back there and go buy the lunch meat. I walked down the wine aisle intentionally.
Hmm.
I had to face it. And I had to do that through repetition. And I had to get comfortable with the fact that it's just another aisle. It was not my sanctuary anymore.
Right, right.
So, there are a lot of people that I would not encourage you to do that. Um, you know, you kind of know your innermost self, and you need to stick to your guns on that. In recovery, that is your time to be self-centered, even around your family. I truly believe that in recovery, that is your time to be self-centered. In a 12-step program, you're taught that once you get through those 12 steps, your entire goal is to no longer be self-centered, and you go out and you try to help others based on your life story. But in that period of the hard days, the days that you're barely hanging on, be self-centered and create whatever structure works best for you.
I think in some ways my you know 100 yard aspect about looking at recovery is in some ways a grief process, because you are grieving activities or feelings or habits of a life that you can't do anymore. So you have to learn how to move forward in a different way. But what could take 1 year for you, well, or maybe 10 years, 15 years, could be 50 years for somebody else, could be 1 year for somebody else. It's how do you overcome those things? I mean, I'm an ex-smoker, believe it or not. I used to smoke a pack a day, and in 2010 I quit it cold turkey. Now I keep flossers. That's my oral addiction thing, right? I mean,
Right.
but hey, I get to go to the dentist and I have no cavities, but I got flossers here at my desk in the truck, and because if I'm nervous or whatever about something, I floss. I
Right.
don't smoke.
Yeah, and the thing is, as addicts, I've said this before, we tend to be people that do everything to the extreme. Um, Smokers, it goes hand in hand. Oftentimes overeaters, put ourselves at risk, extreme sports, all of those things kind of come with the addict mindset. And what I have discovered is that it's just like uh, someone who's trying to lose weight. You'll see them become addicts at the gym. uh, there are times that you have to replace something with something positive, and
Yeah.
that works for so many people. With me, I did go through the grieving period briefly, but I discovered in my 12-step program, as God-centered as it was, it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be, because I became kind of addicted to trying to help out another alcoholic. If you have one day of sobriety and someone walks in the room still shaking, you have something that you can give them.
Yeah.
Wherever you are in your stage of development of overcoming an addiction, you can still offer everything that you know up to that point. Now, don't go talking about how the program goes beyond whatever step you're on. But if you have the ability to do nothing else, if you're broke, if your rock bottom has stripped everything away from you, you can always help someone. And the amount of what you receive in return is unfathomable when you do that, and how much the obsession goes away very quickly if you're actually helping someone else that you identify as an addict like yourself.
Because it kind of turns into a different kind of you're getting addiction to joy to replace the feeling that you were getting from the alcohol. The I want to say the an artificial joy, right? I mean, alcohol does kind
Yeah.
of present an artificial joy. I know when I was at my lowest after my or during my divorce, and I talk about it in my book that, I had to go and serve. It was part of his class. And I was like, man, I need I'm going through all of this stuff. I need somebody to serve me. I feel like, I'm the victim. I need to be served. But God put me on this mission. No, Eva, you need to go out there and serve somebody else who has it less than you. And that guy was actually then serving me. Here I was, actually went to go serve him. Okay, God, I'm doing this. And that man, he ended up serving me. It was just kind of this neat experience. Um, we were feeding homeless people in Dallas, and as a part of this assignment, it was just one of the neatest experiences I've ever had in my entire life. But when you think that you're at your worst, going and serving somebody else, there's something there's something that switches in the brain and in your soul that says, "Oh, this is why you had me do this, God. Okay, yeah, okay, I get it."
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And one of the in the 12-step program, in the 11th step, we will often say something that's the 11th step prayer, and it's really some of the phrases in the 11th step prayer are that it is better to understand than to be understood.
Mhm.
Where there is darkness, may I bring light. These are things that are all self-forgetting because it's self-centeredness that's the core to our addiction. Now, we can think that we're drinking because we were such victims and all of that. We play a part in every single scenario almost 98% of the time that we feel that we're the victims in. So it's a very self-centered disease. And that's why I always tell people in the actual 12-step program, while you're trying to go through the prospect of recovery, it's still okay to be self centered in creating what you need around you to empower that. But ultimately, once you go through that 12th step, then your true freedom comes from going forward and helping other people. The self centered aspects of this are why we insulate ourselves to true experiences with being buzzed, drunk, wasted, whatever your flavor of how inebriated you wanted to get. You were missing so much in that, or at least I discovered I was missing so much in that, that in sobriety, it's almost like being a kid again. It's taken my kids for the first time to Mount Bunnell down in Austin, and I climbed up to the top of the steps, and I wasn't winded, and I wasn't sweating. And before, every time I had done it, from whatever age they were, I was drunk when I was doing it,
Mm.
and I didn't ever enjoy the view. And this last time that we went, I enjoyed the view, and I could breathe in the air, and there was joy that I had insulated myself against all that time. So yeah, it's an opportunity to experience life. I will say this right now, at age 50, I've been sober for almost 4 years. I started drinking at 21. I feel like I stopped maturing at 21, and I'm just now doing it again 25 years late.
Ah, that makes sense. I mean, I get it, and for here in Texas, it was the what is it? When I was turned 18 is when they changed it to 21, but when I was 18, actually when I was 16, I was buying beer. It's kind of funny time back then. And the things were pretty loose on understanding what alcohol was really doing in our culture, you know,
Mhm.
that there was a temptation to go buy the beer early. I mean, it was pressured on us to that peer pressure was there to go get drunk. Some people, did the marijuana and stuff. I was not ever into any of that. I mean, I was pretty happy with life, but I think I mentioned that been drinking because I know that is a thing too. You can still be an alcoholic who binge drinks and not be considered the daily alcoholic. But that's the one that ends up getting you in the trouble too, especially if you're drinking and driving.
Sure, absolutely. And the thing is, I think all of us, the college age, you see a lot of just rite of passage
Mhm.
binge drinking that takes place. It usually doesn't lead to anything good, but it doesn't necessarily mean that someone's going to be an alcoholic.
Right.
What I will tell people though regarding binge drinking is, um, we see people a lot of the times in the rooms that will say, "Am I truly an alcoholic?" Well, if it's a genetic disease, my grandfather wasn't, my grandmother, well, okay, uncle so and so was. If you're trying to identify your problem that way, you're going to just be spinning your tires out. And you're not focusing on the reality of, is your life falling apart right now? Is it
Right.
unmanageable right now? Because you can be born with type 1 diabetes, or you can eat your way to type 2 diabetes. Either way, you come to a point that you got to put down the cake.
Right.
So, binge drinkers can drink their way and you can damage the brain into alcoholism as much as it just being a genetic trait. Either way, it affects roughly 1 in 10 people in the United States.
It's still a choice. It's still a choice. I know Daryl and I on the Revivalist radio show, we've talked about Noah and alcohol. And I think we talked a little bit about it last week, but I was thinking about it when I was working on the RV this morning. I said, it's just my dialogue in my head. Noah had done all of that with the ark, saw the destruction of everything, and they land, and he's got his family and growing his grapes and making his own wine. He gets drunk. And it got me to thinking, like, he sees the destruction of the world, and then what? He hit this bottom, right? I mean, he saw the destruction of the world, and I was thinking, we have veterans who have gone and saw, they've seen lots of destruction in Iraq and Afghanistan, maybe even Saudi Arabia, or I was. You see all this destruction, you see all this stuff. Could be somebody who's a firefighter, policeman, right? We have first responders who experience a lot of stuff, and they get to this point in their life, and then what, right? Because how do you unstuck yourself and say there's more to life than getting drunk and just lying there? So how do you turn on that purpose? I don't know if that's something that you can identify. How do you turn on that purpose and have that aha moment and say, okay, I got, it's not about just hitting the bottom, but just flipping the switch and saying, I got to do something different.
Yeah, and I mean, the thing is, when let's say veterans, for example, Noah, for example, what I've been through just as a average run-of-the-mill drunk who's, been chased by the law and everything, whatever extreme we've been through numbs us from the little beauties that are all around every single day. What happens when the drama goes away?
Right.
There's still
Right.
there's still people in need. I mean, it's not going to be a mass casualty event every time. Sometimes the kid just needs to hear your words of wisdom, and they can't do that when you're drunk. And I talked a little bit last time about how that the problem is always you. And I had mentioned that I'd never really had a burning bush moment, but I, I look back on it now and I know kind of when I did. You like camping, right? I mean, you do a lot of hiking and things of that nature. So
I'm
we've been
adventurous,
trying
yes.
to, yeah, and so we've been trying to get the kids out over the past few years, and we did Paladuro Canyon, Caprock Canyon last year. Was wonderful. Well, this year we went to Copper Breaks. I'd never been before. My mom grew up in that area, and I kept hearing that it was like listed as the second darkest dark sky zone area in the United States. And I didn't know what that meant, but they were like, "Oh, you come out, we all the lights are out. You're going to be able to see the Milky Way." And I'd been camping several times, but I'd never seen what the majesty of the whole Milky Way was going to be. And so we're walking down the trail to go where all these astronomers are going to be at sunset. and it's getting darker and darker, and they've got telescopes set up. And I flipped on my cell phone just to kind of like check a text message. Do you want to see nerds get violent? When I turned on my cell phone, this astronomer starts screaming, "Turn it off!" And then he says, "Don't look at him, don't look at him." Everyone closed their eyes. Well, I apologized for my faux pas, right? But I realized that as I was seeing some of the stars kind of coming into view as the sun was going down, I looked at my light, I looked back up, I couldn't see them again. Took a
Yeah.
while for my eyes to adjust. And, you know, the darker it got, all of a sudden the whole Milky Way came into view. And I walked away from that after seeing the majesty of that. And I thought to myself, the problem is that we need to dim ourselves. If you want to know the will of God and how you can help other people, you have to dim yourself to see the beauty of all of that. It's our light pollution of our will, and when we try to take that back, that's when everything goes awry.
Wow. It's as you're talking about seeing the sky, I've had some of those instances where I'm scuba diving and you see, man, that's the rest of the world underneath the ocean that God created. And you have those moments and it's like, wow, what peace
Hmm.
that, this is that feeling you want to carry with around you every single day, that kind of peace. And it's fleeting sometimes, but you have to work towards getting those moments and appreciating them when they happen, and yeah, turning off the lights.
Yeah.
All right, any last words before we close?
Yeah, again, there's a ton of different 12-step programs out there and rehabs. Do your kind of own research a little bit on it, but the main thing is plug in and don't be afraid to ask for help. And regardless of what you've been through, the key component to you know being able to cope with an addiction is to dim your own light and find your higher power. And if that's something that scares some people, I will tell you this, one of the wisest things that helped me get over my fear of trying to turn my will and my life over to the care of a loving God as I understood him is someone told me one time in the room, he said, God is the name that we embroider on the blanket that we throw over the mystery to give it shape. That's it. And so when I was afraid to say God, I can say that now again. And you'll figure that relationship out once you realize that you're not in charge of your own life.
Well, I think that has been something that's, been part of this whole moral injury discussion that Daryl and I have been having on the Revivalist radio show, is that they want everything to be about science minus God, right? Let's take God out of the schools, take God out of life in general. But
Mhm.
culture is suffering because God's not he's not the true north of the moral compass. Well, if you don't have God as a part of your moral compass, then who's leading your moral compass? If it's ourselves as a lower G God, how's that working for you? Right?
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, not too
Thank
well.
you so much, Russ. I'd love to meet you and your wife sometime too, have lunch or something. I think y'all aren't very far away, so it's not like I can meet you if you want. But
Absolutely. Well, thank you for
uh
having me again. And yeah, we need to make that happen, definitely. But thanks for having me
yeah,
back.
yeah, appreciate it. And as things progress, you want to come back on, you're welcome back anytime.
Sure, I'd look forward to it.
Okay. Thank you. All right, folks. Let's see. I'm going to be on the road next weekend. So headed back me and going across country, right? So, I've been working on the RV. It will be travel ready, fixing to head back to my favorite hardware store here shortly. But I am going to be on the road. So I haven't quite decided if I'm going to be able to have a show next Saturday night, Saturday afternoon. I may stop somewhere at a road stop and do the show from my truck or the RV. It's not like I haven't done that before. So what will be any different? I'll just be a different location. And then the following Saturday, the whole reason why I am heading across country, I'm going to be at Rally for Vets. So make sure you join us at Dominion Raceway on the 12th, right? September 12th at Dominion Raceway in Virginia. Y'all have a great week. Thank you for joining the Military Broadcast Radio on the From Pain to Purpose radio show. Talk to you soon.
Hi, I'm Beaker with Military Broadcast Radio TV. We're your virtual MWR, bringing veterans radio, podcasts, gaming, animation, 3D printing, and a community that never leaves you behind. Download our Roku or mobile app today.
Wisdom to share if you listen this week, so pull up a chair and stay for a spell. We're heading down a trail where good stories dwell.